Hi everybody. Welcome to the chat room of Blue Nose 2. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about weather and particularly what goes into us canceling harbor cruises, so you can get a bit of an insight into what we use to make our decision and how we make our decision, and then what we do once we have made that decision. First of all, we'll start with a very broad forecast, probably from Environment Canada or one of the other sites, saying that there's potential bad weather coming. And we'll start looking at this probably 4 or 5 days out to have an idea, hey, maybe there's going to be a cruise we can't do, or maybe we're going to lose a whole day. As the time gets closer and closer, we'll start watching the systems, and we'll start to be much more technical in nature. So we'll start looking at isobar maps, which is the pressure gradients of the Earth's atmosphere. We'll start looking at rain, maybe, of Boston or Toronto, and seeing where it's trending and where it's looking. And then we'll start to bring in more and more different sites, different weather sites, to help make our decision. So some of the things that we're looking at might be fog with limited visibility. We would look at heavy winds, swell state, and the amount of rain that we're looking at getting. So on top of this all, we look at where in the season we are with crew training. So if the crew are more trained and have experienced more harbor cruises and more time at sea and more heavy weather, then they would be able to respond better to a weather event while we had passengers on board. So that all goes into the mix, and then we make our decision. So some of the things we might look at, you can see here on the screen. This is Environment Canada's weather radar. So you can see here that there's a bit of rain moving across the Great Lakes, a bit moving up towards Toronto. So we would use that, of course, with, more focused in on Nova Scotia. So that we use AccuWeather radar as well, because they have a forecasting portion of rainfall. We might look at a site like Blitzertung here, and this is specifically lightning related. So in the last few lightning storms that we've had in Nova Scotia, we've been able to watch this coming with this worldwide lightning detection system, which is really helpful to us. We can see where the lightning is trending, and when you're carrying a big tall mast with a metal pole on top of it, that's really important. Here we have our electronic navigation, or one of them. You can see the tracks here for the last week. We actually go back and look at our track and look at where we've gone and talk about the decisions that we made in different places. And then we'll look at where the weather's going to be, where the swell conditions are going to be overlaid onto that map. There's a great, Luna Oceans has a great wave buoy just outside of Cross Island here in Lunenburg, so we can see what the sea conditions are. So for instance, the other day we knew that there was a 7-8 foot swell outside of Cross Island, so that meant that we wanted to stay along the shore by Spelson South and the Ovens and not put the ship in a big swell condition with passengers on board. For forecasting, we use many different things. We use, of course, Environment Canada, and then most mariners have their own favorite website that they use, or forecasters. This is a site that I pay for. It's called Predict Wind, and it will give me 5 or 6 different models, so I can see what the wind is going to be, where they predict it's going to come from, what the gust strength is going to be. And with this particular site, I can also look at wind sort of at masthead height for us, again, which might be different from surface winds. So that's something that we'll take into account. We'll also take into account even things like tide, and what the swell conditions are going to be over the tide, over a low tide situation on the charts. So that goes all into the mix, and if we decide to cancel a cruise for whatever reason, we'll talk to the office. We're very conscious that people are sometimes coming from a long distance away, so maybe from Halifax or the Valley to do a harbor cruise with us. So that might be an hour and a half drive. So for a morning cruise, we would try and maybe put the word out the evening before, said, hey, we're looking at a weather situation, pay attention to your email before you leave to come to Lunenburg. Then in the morning, we try and make the decision by 7:30, and that would give people like an hour and a half to get to Lunenburg for 9 o'clock. And to pick up their tickets, have a safety briefing for 9:30 departure. And then we do the same for the afternoon cruise. We try and make the decision during the morning cruise at 10:30. Again, so an email can go out and people can be notified to say, hey, we're not going to be sailing today. You can still come to Lunenburg and here's some things to do, but the Blue Nose won't be going out. I had a great pilot who saw me on the dock one day when I was a young captain, stressing about whether to go out on a harbor cruise or not, and I really take it to heart when we can't go, because I know people have made plans around it. And he sort of came up alongside me and he said, listen, you would rather be sitting on the runway wishing you were in the air than being in the air and wishing you were on the runway. And that was great advice to a young captain who was stressing about whether to go or not, and whether it was going to be safe to go or not. And so certainly we put safety in the forefront, and we're not going to go out in heavy winds and fog, limited visibility where we have no brakes on the ship and charging through the fog. So anyway, that's what goes into making those decisions. And a shout out to the Lunenburg Fire Department today. I'm wearing their t-shirt, which they kindly gave me. They've painted up their fire trucks here in town to say Home of the Blue Nose 2, and they put some of the ship's scroll work on it. And it's a lovely shout out from such an important organization within the town to say that they value the ship and what the ship represents for Lunenburg and for the province. So shout out to them and a big thank you, and talk to you next time.